So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Just so you know, we're recording this session and it will be available afterwards so that anybody who joins can see what's going on, or you can pass it on to any colleagues later if you need to. Okay, today I'm going to talk about an important security issue that you need to consider, namely Windows Server 2012 going end of support. So I'm going to be discussing that. After that, Sophos are going to discuss their MDR solution for Microsoft Defender and how you can complement your Microsoft security products and get extra resources and support to help you with that. Okay, so let's get started. So as I said, Windows Server 2012 and Windows Server 2012 R2 have gone end of support from Microsoft. This was last week. So what difference does that make to you? Well, in essence, Microsoft have stopped providing new features for the product. But more importantly, they will no longer provide any security updates for the product. Even though Microsoft have stopped providing product updates, you have a few options to keep your servers safe, including extended security updates, or ESUs, which are available to customers with software assurance. And luckily, EES customers all have software assurance, so you'll be able to take advantage of this if needed. So what the ESUs will provide you with is important and critical security updates for the term of the ESU, which is until October 2026. At this point, hopefully you will have upgraded, or you won't have to stop running Windows 2012, but you could have unprotected workloads. Okay, so your best option in all cases is to keep your environment secure by running the latest software. If your servers are licensed on a campus agreement, then you will not incur any additional charges to upgrade to a newer or the latest version of the software because it includes software assurance. This should always be your first option, and even if you can't upgrade immediately, it should be on your roadmap to be done as soon as possible. However, we live in the real world. It's not always possible for technical or staff resources or any other reasons. So let's look at what other options you have. Okay, firstly, if your legacy Windows 2012 workloads can be run on Azure, try and migrate them into Azure. The reason for this is that VMs in Azure will receive extended security updates at no additional cost. So if you have Windows 2012 VMs in Azure, or you can migrate your workloads into Azure, you will get the ESUs free of charge. However, with this option, you will be charged for the running costs of the VM, the compute costs, the storage costs. You will also get charged for the licensing costs. So make sure that you make use of hybrid use benefits, which will allow you to use your on-premise academic licenses in Azure instead of the commercial license that Azure will charge you. Okay, one thing to consider about migrating servers and the ESUs, if you don't migrate in the first year of the ESU, you will be charged for the first year of the ESU, because the way the ESU works, you're always charged from October 2023. So if you migrate in the third year of the ESU, for instance, you would have to pay for years 1 and years 2, even though the ESU is free. Sorry, excuse me. So Microsoft Azure Arc is a way you can manage your on-premise workloads together with your Azure workloads in a single system in Azure. Now, this is Microsoft's recommended option if you have to keep your servers in an on-premise physical or virtual server. It is licensed as part of your Azure overage through an Azure subscription on a monthly basis. So because it's on a monthly basis, one of the benefits of this agreement is that if you manage to upgrade at any time during the agreement, you then stop paying for the ESU. So if you're 6 months into the agreement, you only have to pay for 6 months worth of ESU rather than the full year of the ESU. Another benefit of using Azure Arc is that you can license the VM on-premise or the on-prem host. So depending on which is the most cost-effective for you, so which has got least cause in reality to reduce your cost. Okay, so that's Azure Arc, and that's Microsoft's recommended option. But you might decide that your only option is to have your on-premise servers and you manage them locally, and then you still have the option of buying the ESU part numbers for on-premise. They must, when you're on-premise, you must license the physical server host. And it's licensed in the same way as Windows Server itself. So you need to provide us with the number of physical cores and the VMs you're protecting, and then we can sell you the ESUs based on the number of cores you need. Once you've purchased that license, you'll then be able to apply a MAC key to the server, and this MAC key will tell the Microsoft's Windows Update servers that you are entitled to the ESUs, and then you can carry on being protected. You purchase an ESU for each year you require the updates. So you buy it in year 1, year 2, and year 3. If you don't buy the update in year 1, then you will have to pay for years 1 and years 2 if you start in year 2 or carrying on as you are before. So the ESU updates are important to keep your environment safe if you can't upgrade Windows 2012 at this point. Okay, that's it from me. I'm now going to pass you over to Hywel from Sophos, who's going to be talking about Sophos on MDR and how it can complement your current investment in Microsoft security products. Okay, Hywel, over to you.
Thank you, Eifion. Just want to check that everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, hear
Great.
you fine.
Thank you. And are my slides showing?
Yes.
Great,
yes.
Thank you. Okay, just let me adjust the camera slightly here. Okay, right, thank you everyone. So thank you for the invitation today. I'm Hywel Morgan, Senior Sales Engineering Manager for North EMEA at Sophos. Sophos is a cybersecurity leader founded back in 1985 out of Oxford. Now, I might be a new face to many of you, most of you, but I've actually been at Sophos for 4 years. But until this year, I was based out in Asia. I have a career over 30 years in networking and cybersecurity. In the next 15 minutes, I want to explain and share how Sophos managed detection and response for Microsoft Defender, how it helps stop advanced cyber attacks, and why that is so important in the education sector. The reality is education is in the firing line. There's nothing confidential in this list. This is just a list of some education establishments that have suffered a cyber attack in the past 9 to 12 months. Just run through some of those examples. So in September, the Debenham High School, all their systems were taken offline. I think they're offline for about a week. Highgate Wood School, they had to delay their school term by 6 days. This is 1,500 pupils, age 11 to 16, again, because they were offline due to a ransomware attack. And similar, the Downs School. And there's another one, which is the Wotton Trust. It's about a year ago now, where not only were they taken offline, they were actually given a ransom demand of £500,000. Interestingly, that £500,000 wasn't a random number. It was a number that the attackers had found in their cyber insurance policy. So they knew they'd have a coverage for it. So education really are in the attack. Now, I know these are headlines and I don't want to use them for scare tactics. Let's try and put a bit of perspective on this. Sophos every year commissioned an independent survey of 3,000 IT leaders. Now, this is across 14 countries. And in this latest one, there were 400 respondents from the education sector. And these figures were taken from January to March 2023. If you see this, education is actually reporting the highest rates of ransomware attacks across all the industries that we looked at. And by the way, for definition here, we use two terms that aren't really used in the UK very much: lower education and higher education. Lower education is up to the age of 18. Higher education in this term is above the age of 18. This is, I think these very interesting figures, and education, this is a growth in the being the target and the number of ransomware attacks. And we're going to go into some of the reasons for that. But fundamentally, if we take a step back and consider what are we trying to do at Defenders, how are we trying to stop this? Well, we're in a race with adversaries. Adversaries or attackers are actually getting faster for a variety of reasons. They're using more and more sophisticated technology. They're using AI in various aspects of the attack. They're accelerating all the time to get to their final objective, which is encryption of data when it comes to ransomware and the leaking of data. As defenders, what can we all do against that? Well, there's only two things we can do. We have to slow the attackers down. And typically we do that, and you're already doing that, I'm sure, with many protection layer solutions, be it endpoint security, firewalls, web gateways. All of these things are slowing down the attackers. And then we'd also have to accelerate ourselves as defenders. And this goes beyond the protection layer, which you can think of as a shield stopping the attacks. We have to be ready to detect when something goes beyond that shield and be able to respond very quickly. And that has to be accelerating all the time to stay faster than the attackers achieving their objective. To do that detection and response, we really need 24/7 detection and response capability. Rapidly detect attacks and execute the appropriate responses immediately. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. You say that quickly, that all sounds easy, but in the real world, there are three big challenges that are stopping organizations having that detection and response capability. Cyber threats are accelerating in volume and sophistication all the time. And if we go back to that report, the State of Ransomware report that I put the first figures out of, you'll see in terms of ransomware, how the growth in education being attacked has grown over the last 3 years. In 2021, it was 44% of education establishments were reporting they had been hit by ransomware in the previous year. In 2023, you're looking at around the 80% mark, pretty common between higher education and the primary and secondary schools. Why is this growing? It's a couple of things, but the main one is adversaries are able to do these attacks now at scale. They're using more and more ransomware as a service. So the barrier to getting in there and actually performing an attack is lowering all the time. It's cheap for them to do it. And the other part is schools are often caught in a net, even if schools aren't the primary focus. When you get the initial access brokers who are, providing it as a service, paid on the number of organizations they get a foot into, they'll just grab as many as they can. And if some of those are schools, some of those are schools. From a ransomware writer's point of view, if you don't pay, it hasn't cost them very much, but it's caused you huge amount of disruption and stress. Second part is, there's so many security tools out there. It's becoming so complex to manage these. It's easy to miss signals. Security operations teams, even in the largest academy trusts, are going to be drowning in alerts. So if you are looking after a 1 or 2 schools, it's just so hard to stay on top of all of those security tools, your firewalls, your endpoints, look at the signals across them all. That's just an impossible situation. And the final one, hiring and retaining cybersecurity experts, is so hard right now. Attackers know this. If we look at, and these figures aren't particularly for education, but generally, 90% of ransomware attacks are happening outside standard work hours. And in education, that means weekends, school holidays. When they know that people are having well-earned rest, that's when they know the guards at their lowest. If they get past the initial protection layer, there's nobody there to spot what's happened. You might say, how are they getting past the protection layer so easy? Isn't that the job of the likes of Sophos to stop that? And it's a fair question. But the majority of the attacks now aren't people hacking in. It's compromised credentials. It might have been a phishing attack many, many months ago, but those compromised credentials mean an attacker can now, they can connect in, they can log in legitimately, or it might be there's an exposed RDP server somewhere. They can use the credentials to get into those. So it's not always, in fact, it's very rarely now just old-fashioned malware getting into your environment and opening up a back door. And going back to the first point I was talking about, the ransomware dwell time. So the time from ransomware getting into an organization and actually activating and achieving its objectives has almost halved. The attackers are getting faster all the time, and we need to be getting faster as well to stay ahead of them. The reality is we all need 24/7 detection and response, and that's going to be a combination of the technology, the people, and when I talk about people, I'm talking about skill sets like threat investigation, responding to alerts, understanding what's happening, threat response, isolating an attackers in there and kicking them out, threat hunting, looking for the indicators of an attack even when no product has created an alert. That's a highly skilled role and in very short supply in the world. You need a process, well documented, frequently reviewed and tested, and then the technology alongside it. Now, you might say, Hywel, you're in a dream world. How on earth can we achieve this? And reality is, it comes down to is it right for us to try and build all that ourselves? Or should we buy in that capability? To help make that decision, I think there's 3 questions, and no need to put these in the chat, but 3 questions to ask yourselves. Number 1, do you have enough people to be able to investigate and respond to security alerts 24/7? Maybe during the middle of a half-term holiday. When you think about scaling this out, that would mean you'd really need 5 security analysts, a minimum of 5. When you think of shifts in the day, holiday, weekend, sickness. How are you currently detecting the attacks that have bypassed the security controls? I said 65% of ransomware attacks actually start with an attacker logging in using legitimate credentials or exploiting an unknown vulnerability. How would you spot that? And how quickly can you respond to a threat that's been confirmed to be malicious? So those are 3 questions to ask yourself to decide, are we better off just buying in this skill set rather than trying to build it out ourselves? How can Sophos help? Well, we provide Sophos Managed Detection Response, which is a 24/7 instant SOC. It has the expert-led threat hunting. And the last 2 parts, full-scale incident response capabilities and breach protection warranty up to $1 million, those are dependent on you using Sophos as your endpoint security. And if you are using Sophos, fantastic. Thank you very much. You've made a good choice. But I appreciate not everybody is, and we appreciate that as an organization. So if you think about what detection and response is trying to do, the first stage is it's pulling in all of those signals, all of the events from your security estate. Of course, we pull all those in from the Sophos security products you may have, but we don't limit it to Sophos. Pull them in from a wide range of endpoint, firewall, cloud, email, identity, network solutions. And when you think about how attacks often unfold, it's really important to get that wide visibility. You know, if you think how a relatively typical attack might unfold, phishing email comes in, user clicks on a link, goes through a web gateway or a firewall, credentials get compromised, an attacker fakes their identity, malicious tools installed on endpoints and servers, and then they move across your network to get to your AD. The wider that visibility that you have across the wide range of security solutions you have gives us that visibility, pulling all that data in. And you'll see we pull all that information in from Microsoft solutions, not just Microsoft Defender, but a wide range of solutions that might be in your E3 or E5 entitlement. Once we've pulled all that data in, that causes us another problem, which is, right, now we've got a massive amount of data. How do we take all that and actually work out what's important? All of those events are fed into the Sophos XDR data lake. And to put into context, we're receiving 32 billion events into that data lake each day. So we use many different methods to collect that information, correlate that information, add context to it around our threat intelligence so that we can come out with a very small set of incidents that really need our human experts to work on your behalf and investigate what's going on in the environment. That's how it allows us, and this is real stats, our MDR team. We do the detection, investigation, and remediation on average in 38 minutes. That's compared to an internal SOC team, and these numbers are from AV Test. On average, we're doing taking 16 hours. You know, I'll let you think, how long would it take you as an education organization, especially maybe if you think of the worst case, maybe over a weekend or during a holiday. Now, Sophos MDR for Microsoft Defender, I'm not going to go through all of these items, but you can see it's a very thorough solution. I mentioned earlier, there are certain things such as full-scale incident response and Sophos breach warranty, the $1 million, up to $1 million, are only available if you have Sophos endpoint security. And that's called Sophos MDR Complete. I'm sure you understand why, but if we are building this on top of Microsoft Defender and the other Microsoft solutions, it does limit us a little bit on what we can do because we don't have the endpoint solution that we can connect into. So there are certain things we can't do there, but we still do the threat response. We'll still get to the stage of containing an attack, kicking out an attacker, taking away their access from connecting back in. And in fact, when you have all that in place, it actually minimizes the likelihood of you ever needing full-scale incident response. But should you need it, we can still bridge that gap, and we can still provide an incident response retainer option, so you get priority access to full-scale incident response should you need it. In terms of where we sit in the market, there's no Gartner Magic Quadrant for MDR right now, but the closest thing to it is we have been named as Gartner's Customer Choice for MDR, the highest rated and the most ratings overall. And we also have the most customers. We have over 18,000 customers using Sophos MDR today. To put into context, that's more than the next 3 competitors put together. We also, in terms of quadrants, the G2 report is being used more and more, and we are the leader within that. So however you look at it, we are a leader in managed detection and response. But it's not just MDR. You know, we have a wide portfolio of solutions. I won't go through all of these. I know we're short on time today, but if we think of what I was talking about earlier, on the left-hand side, we have the protection layers, and then Sophos MDR and Sophos XDR are our detection and response layers. All of these backed up by our threat intelligence, artificial intelligence, and other services that are powering these solutions. And these solutions themselves, MDR, endpoint protection, network firewalls, mobile threat defense, are all Gartner's Customers Choice. So I know the cybersecurity challenges facing schools and colleges today are tough. Sophistication and scale of attacks, being overwhelmed by the tools that aren't really helping you accelerate what you're trying to do. And hiring just an army of staff isn't an option. Sophos delivers the solution as Sophos MDR, and it doesn't matter if you're using Sophos as your endpoint security, Trend, Kaspersky, or particularly Microsoft. We can still provide, and we do provide, that 24/7 detection and response on your behalf without expecting you to rip and replace and put Sophos in. So that was it.